I started reading the Flashman books sometime in the early 1970s, and a few weeks ago I picked up the first volume in the series again, and I was surprised to find it just as enjoyable it was originally, even after 50 years. If you've never heard of Flashman, you might have three questions. What are these books about? Just who is Flashman? And what makes them worth looking at, picking them up? So let's start with the first question. What are the books about? They're a series of, I think it's a total of 12 volumes that purport to be the memoirs of a British officer in the Victorian era. Just say between 1840 and 1900. The idea is that the memoirs were written sometime in the early 1900s and were discovered and published starting in the 1960s. Since the guy who supposedly wrote the memoirs, Harry Paget Flashman, was in his 80s when he wrote them, he felt free for the first time in his life to be completely, totally, brutally honest. Now, the Flashman Papers, the book I picked up, is the first novel in the series. The books cover a lot of the important goings-on in British and U.S. history. And that includes places like India, Afghanistan, Africa, and the U.S. There are a lot of really wild characters in the books, but some of them were actual, real historical people. Like Abraham Lincoln and George Custer, plus a lot of other, I guess, famous Brits that I know hardly anything about. Now, I've read reviews of these books that were written by professional historians who say that the background events described are dead accurate, even though Flashman himself is, of course, completely fictional. I'll take their word on that. So what you're really getting in these books is a kind of a fly-on-the-wall view of history, but it's a very, very special fly. And that brings me to the second question. Just who is Flashman? He comes out of a book I've never read, Tom Brown's School Days, and Harry Flashman was the school bully who apparently tortured and tormented poor old Tom Brown. When Flashman gets kicked out of school for drunkenness, he joins the army, and that's what triggers everything in these books. What's important about Flashman is his character. He's a liar, a cheat, a coward, a scoundrel, a thief, a drunkard. He's unbelievably arrogant, racist, and I think most people would say misogynistic. He's totally consumed with getting maximum pleasure out of life with the least possible effort. And that means he's really into drinking, he's into sports, and he's into seducing women. I think there must have been a lot of these guys in Victorian England, since the Brits even invented a word for them, poltroon. Us Americans would probably just call him an asshole. Now, on the plus side, Flashman is a good horseman. He's got a great talent for languages, which he picks up from the women he seduces. He's incredibly lucky, and best of all, he is funny. Genuinely laugh out loud funny. So why would you pick these books up? Well, it's precisely because of that. They are funny. Now, I'm going to hasten to say, don't pick them up if you're somehow or other into being politically correct. You can consider this a trigger warning. On the other hand, if you appreciate brutal honesty, a different view of history, and very good writing, these are for you. Of course, you gotta like funny books. So the book I'm recommending this week is The Flashman Papers by George MacDonald Fraser. I'm going to have another book to recommend next week, and I do hope you check back in. In the meantime, you might give Flashman a try. See you next week.